She didn't realize she was being controlled, and the scary part is, it never looked like control. He never raised his voice. He never laid down the law or gave her direct orders. Instead, he would just suggest, "I just worry about you," he'd say, with this look of genuine concern in his eyes. "You're just so sensitive, and things really affect you deeply." Slowly, almost without her noticing, she started to doubt herself, her own feelings, her own reactions. When she felt hurt about something, it was like he didn't even notice. He would just brush it off. "Are you sure you're not just reading too much into this?" he'd ask. When she tried to question his behavior or inconsistencies in his stories, he would sigh softly and call it her insecurity. "I think this is more about your past trust issues, don't you?" And every single time, he sounded so calm, so reasonable, so incredibly caring. It was maddening, because how could you argue with someone who seemed to care so much about you? Over time, her world started to shrink. It wasn't a dramatic, overnight change. He never told her to stop seeing her friends or cut off her family. It was much more subtle than that. He just made her feel guilty for choosing them. If she made plans to go out with her friends, he wouldn't get angry. He would just become distant, quiet. The texts would slow down. His warmth would just disappear. But if she canceled her plans and stayed home with him, he would become the most attentive, loving partner again. Her nervous system, the part of her that just wants to feel safe and loved, learned the pattern long before her conscious mind did. It figured out the equation. Please him, and you feel safe. Go against what he wants, and you feel anxious and alone. She was being trained, like a pet, with positive and negative reinforcement. The reward was his affection. The punishment was its withdrawal. And that constant emotional roller coaster, that walking on eggshells, wears you down. It erodes your sense of self, your confidence, and your connection to your own intuition. The most dangerous part of all this wasn't just the manipulation itself. It was how completely invisible it was. It wasn't obvious abuse. There were no threats, no yelling, no outright commands. There were only these subtle, constant rewrites of her reality, little tweaks to her memory and her perception. He'd say things like, "I never said that," or "You're remembering it wrong," with such conviction that she started to believe him over her own mind. This is often called gaslighting. It's a technique used to make someone question their own sanity. By the time a small, persistent voice in the back of her head started whispering that something was deeply wrong, she no longer trusted her own judgment. How could she? She had been taught, methodically and patiently, that her feelings were invalid, her reactions were exaggerated, and her memory was unreliable. She felt lost, confused, and incredibly lonely, even when he was right there next to her. That's the insidious nature of covert manipulation. It's control disguised as concern. It's a power play hidden behind a mask of softness and care. It's not about loud arguments. It's about quiet influence that chips away at your soul until you don't recognize yourself anymore. Recognizing this pattern is the first, most crucial step toward breaking free. It starts with learning to trust that little voice inside you again. Your feelings are valid. Your perception of reality matters. If you feel like you're constantly walking on eggshells, if you're always second-guessing yourself, if your world has gotten smaller and your joy feels conditional, it might not be you. It might be the invisible strings of control. If any of this sounds familiar, please know you are not alone, and it's not your fault. This form of emotional abuse is incredibly confusing and disorienting. Talking to a trusted friend, a family member, or a mental health professional can be a lifeline. They can offer an outside perspective and help you see the situation for what it truly is, not what you've been conditioned to believe it is. Reclaiming your reality is possible, and it begins with the brave step of acknowledging the truth. Thank you for listening.